The countdown, are we ready?
You're ready, Steve. You're on the air.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Today is the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County work session on Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. And we are 4 of us meeting from our remote locations. John is sitting up on the edge of Sneaky Ski Run, looking over at Garrett Peak, and Patty's in the room. So, first on our agenda we have a review of future agendas. John, could you take this away, please?
Yeah, thank
John
you,
Peacock?
Steve. Yep, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Yep. Okay. So a few items to discuss. Obviously, a lot of our agendas are remaining fairly light, I think, for obvious reasons right now. First, we had planned a joint meeting with the City of Aspen on May 5th. I have not had a conversation with the city yet to see if they are wanting to have that joint meeting, but wanted to check in with the board as to whether you'd want to try and keep that on the calendar if the city is open to it, or should we try and push that to a later date when we might be able to gather in a room together. I guess I'd start off there.
Well, if you
So,
Well,
What's the feeling of the board in having an in-person? I think, George?
yeah, my comment would be, what would be the
George?
discussion? Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear
Anybody
you.
hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, great. So, yeah, the question, what would we be discussing? And that's really the question.
you know, my sense, George, and like I said, I have not had a conversation with Sarah yet. So I would assume probably be related to whatever the newest updates are around COVID. I would note that there are probably some thank yous in order. The city, as they've appropriated funds, have stepped up in a really significant way to support our economic assistance and such. So it'd be a good opportunity to recognize those things. And then I guess I would turn it back to you to see if there are other kind of pressing topics, or if it makes sense to push off that is totally understandable also.
No, I would push it off.
I think if, yeah, the only reason, I mean, if we could do talk through our steps we're taking on the COVID-19 thing, we could do an online, just a Zoom meeting for that, and just limit it to that topic, because that's such an important topic right now, and we never have really talked directly with the city council people about the virus and our steps we're taking about it. And so I would suggest, if we do it, just do it for the talking about the virus, put off any other topics into an in-person meeting sometime in the, whenever things get reopened.
Steve,
What does the rest of the board think?
Steve, can I make a comment?
Patty?
Yeah, the only concern I have is looking at the agenda for that day. I don't see how we're gonna fill it from 10 to the time we leave at 4 to go over to City Hall. So we may have to juggle that whole day agenda around if we just wanted to bring the city in later in the day. So that may be a reason it doesn't work. I don't know.
Greg?
Yeah, hi, thanks. I certainly wanted to thank everyone so far who has been the heroic efforts on the part of everybody who's been working with the IMT. I know people at the city are involved in ways, especially with their financial relief, that maybe there's something to be had there in the way of a meeting I was trying to think of other things that are coming down the pipe that we should be ready for when things do start relaxing and opening up. And I know we'll get to it in the board reports, but I just spoke with April Long earlier today about what's happening with Rudai and Rawapa. The Forest Service has it closed now, but if the Forest Service relaxes that and opens back up, especially if they open Lake Powell, we're going to have to deal with aquatic nuisance species things. So I'm thinking, you know, I want to keep things going if we can. If we can get people on the agenda via Zoom, that'd be great. Regarding the city, that doesn't need to be a Rawapa issue. That can be done separately. I know we had the bear issue on, but it looks like they're, you know, the Wildlife Service is putting that off till the fall. I guess we're okay with that, but I guess I'd like to look at the timeline and see what's pressing that's going to stack up on us, and maybe attack that while we do have a lighter schedule. I'm fine with the Zoom meetings. I think that they're pretty efficient. We're getting better at them every time. And so I would say let's go in and look at the things that are going to be coming up and biting us when things get opened up. The way the governor was talking yesterday in a manner which was to me a little bit surprising when he was discussing they want to open up, yet they're also talking about flattening the curve. And I'd like to unwind that at some point, but you can anticipate more people wanting to do more things in public places, and we're going to need to be ready for them. The reason I brought up Rawapa is I heard that somebody actually broke into Wolford Reservoir, a fishing guide, so he could go fishing, and you know, violating the aquatic nuisance species rules and a number of other rules. You can anticipate this happening around here too with some of our recreational areas. So if we need to meet, let's look at the pressing issues and get them on an agenda. That's my thought.
Thank you. Yeah, I would echo Greg's sentiment. I know for me on the future agenda, we'll have the opportunity to talk about kind of what our county opportunities are for helping with recovery and, you know, looking at relief along the lines of what was done in the recession. And I don't know if that conversation will introduce opportunities for us to collaborate or coordinate with the city. For example, if we're looking at, you know, some things affecting construction or some things affecting special permits or, you know, things like that, if we want to be aligned on those conversations, you know, or if there's opportunities that we have to help from the economic side with the city to have those as well. So just at a general level, I would see there being some topics where we could coordinate as boards.
So let me see if I can put together what I think I'm hearing from you guys collectively, which is if we identify timely topics with the city, we can go ahead and set up a Zoom meeting for the 5th. However, if there are not necessarily timely topics for the 5th, the board is okay pushing, identifying a fuller agenda and pushing that meeting out for when both entities, I think, are more prepared to talk about those items. Is that a fair summary of the middle ground between you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
I think every thumbs up, everybody.
I will.
That sounds good, John.
Okay. I'll reach out to Sarah, and if they don't have pressing topics, we'll probably push the meeting. If they do, we'll go ahead and get it scheduled, and we'll let you know. Okay. Other item for future agendas, and I don't know, I see John Ely had a chance to join us. I don't know, I think Lisa was gonna try and join us. It looks like we've got time scheduled for a joint meeting with the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board, and we wanted to use some time during future agendas to talk about prep and items that the board may want to address during that meeting. And I might just take a second to see if Lisa was able to join us.
Do we see Lisa on there?
She maybe was coming for the open discussion time at 1:45.
Oh, that may be.
I'll give her a call right now, John.
Okay. I will try and make something up while you're doing that, John. So, other joint meeting that is on our agenda is a joint meeting with P&Z. They are meeting tonight, and so I think Suzanne was going to chat with them about that joint meeting. Just wanted to do a check-in with you all on does May 19th still make sense to you guys for a joint meeting with P&Z?
We have topics we're going to discuss with them?
I mean, I'm okay with.
So, Patty.
I'm okay with keeping that on there for now.
Okay.
Maybe we can do an in-person, or I don't know what the situation will be on May 19th.
Well, I don't know what to tell you about that either right now, Steve. But
everybody's quiet today.
Yeah, I suspect for that many people, May 19th will probably be early. We'll talk to P&Z tonight. I know there's a lot of significant policy discussions happening. You know, whether they be around GMQS or what have you, and there's probably a number of topics that are ripe for the board and P&Z to have some dialogue on as they go into deliberations and get ready to make recommendations to you guys.
Hey, Steve, I have a question. Steve?
Yeah, Patty?
Yeah, John, the EOTC meeting,
Yes, Patty.
I got it. Can you hear me? The EOTC meeting on the 30th is going to be broadcast grassroots from this room, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure. And then on the 13th, this is just kind of an issue for discussion more than agenda. We have the confirmatory reading on the dog off-leash ordinance that we repealed. Maybe that's going to give us a good opportunity to maybe not pass it, move it forward on second reading, and keep the dog off-leash availability on Smuggler Mountain and what was the other one? Jaffe Park. Just food for thought for the board.
So, Patty, I would defer to John Ely. It may be that you'll want separate actions around that, just in case there were any enforcement actions around dogs while the emergency resolution was in effect, and then to take a separate action to remove that restriction. But yeah, I defer to John on
I'll
that.
talk to John about it. Thanks, John.
And Steve, I'm any other, I think Lisa may have joined us for the Healthy Rivers and Streams discussion too.
Yeah, Lisa, are you on there? Your phone is, if that is you, it's showing you're muted.
Am I there now?
Yeah.
You're
there.
Hey, guys. Sorry, I had it during open discussion, so I just realized you guys were talking about it, so I hopped on.
Really, we just had set aside time, and I'm having trouble looking at two screens at once here. Lisa, we have a joint meeting time scheduled with Healthy Rivers and Streams right now.
Right, for next Tuesday, the 28th is what we had tentatively set.
Right. And so today, what we wanted to do during, well, I guess I wanted to do during future agendas and someone to do during open discussion. Either way, we wanted to have some time for the board to talk about topics for discussion so that staff has time to prepare and you know, each board knows what might be talked about. So I would throw it back to the board as far as potential topics for the joint meeting.
So, Lisa, I guess the first question is, should we go ahead and hold this meeting on the 20, what day is that on?
Yeah, the 28th?
The 28th. Yeah, next
Right.
Tuesday. Or should we put it off? That would be the first question.
I know. I've asked the River Board that question, and have asked for topics, you know, to discuss in preparation for next week's meeting. And I have only heard from one board member so far. I do have a meeting with them tonight. It's a continuation of a grant request. But I don't know that will allow us enough time to get, you know, even a packet together for Charlotte, because those were actually due yesterday. So, and we have really 4 new board members. I don't think that the BOCC is real familiar with. So maybe an in-meeting person would be better, or just give us a little time to get some more topics together for the commissioners. But either way, I think we can make it work.
Yeah, I think part of our thinking was we do want to meet the whole board and get acquainted with the new members, and doing it in person around a table, I think works better. But if everybody is actually on a Zoom or a Google Hangouts kind of a link, we can see each other's faces really well.
Right. I know.
And maybe we can get to know them almost as well as we would in person. George.
Right.
Hey, Lisa, are you planning a retreat with the board?
Not anytime soon. We usually do that in the fall.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I would put it off, but
yeah, and I do have 2 board members down on the Crystal, and one has an iffy internet connection, just like I do up here in Missouri Heights. So I know Chuck had a little trouble last week when we tried to Zoom, but for the most part stayed on. And Bill is also down the Crystal, so I'm not sure. You know, sometimes the internet down that way is a little.
Yeah. Kelly, are you done, George?
Well, I would reschedule.
Yeah. Let me have Kelly next, and then Greg.
Sure. So I'll just offer some topics, and then maybe if the board or Lisa, if you recognize some time sensitivity to them, then just flag that for us. My guess is that they can be discussed at a different time, but you know, some of the topics that I think would be valuable is what the Healthy Streams River and Streams Board perceives when they look at strategically applying grants versus opportunistically applying grants, and just their thoughts on that. And what I mean by that is, you know, proactively spending the money rather than waiting for grant applicants to come and apply for it. Another topic I think would be of interest would be any opportunity to collaborate more closely with open space and trails. And, you know, just identification of water rights as those get acquired in our open space acquisitions, how the 2 boards might work on projects together. And then finally, I would be interested in the board's interest with the Basin Implementation Plan update for our roundtable. our river roundtable, and that would probably require some homework as far as where we're at in that process and what the old plans say and what interest there would be in helping to craft the new plan, the update to the plan. So again, I don't think any of those are super timely unless you see otherwise, Lisa.
Yeah, no, I think those are all great topics, and I know the board has talked about maybe when we do meet about, collaborating more with open space on water rights and projects such as Phillips even, and things like that. So I think those are all great ideas, and I don't see a real urgency unless I'm not sure on the timing of the new plan for the basin implementation plan.
I'm not exactly either, but I'm of the impression it's like a multi-year thing.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Great.
Hey, Steve. Lisa, Greg here. I was just going to say, current projects, things that we have going now already, we still have the basalt whitewater. A project report on that would be interesting. Additionally, there was the plan for the water, the fix of the, I can't remember the name of the ditch head in the lower Roaring Fork. Which one?
Robinson Ditch?
Yes.
Robinson. There was Robinson. Yep. So ongoing projects. And then, yeah, I think conversations about what could happen with Phillips, how Healthy Rivers could synergize with open space at North Star. If anything's happening on legal, on the legal front, it might be interesting in, talking with what the River District and others are doing, maybe from John. And then upcoming projects, if there's anything in the pipeline. Certainly some of those topics can wait, but if there's anything pressing, I wouldn't mind, getting to know the board online at first if necessary, and then going from there. I keep wanting to bring up Requalification only because April has some issues coming up with the Forest Service and closures of the ramp and the reservoir and all that. And I don't know if that's a good conversation to have at the same time we have the conversation with Healthy Rivers. Those are my thoughts. So if there's something pressing, yeah, let's have the meeting. If we can put it off, sure, let's put it off another. If something tells me in another month we can put it off a month, and we're still going to be talking online like this.
Okay. Lisa, maybe you could kind of, if you have a chance, if you're meeting with the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board in a little later this afternoon, maybe you could just pose the question to them that they could be thinking about topics, what they would like to visit with us about. And I think there's not a whole lot of sentiment on our board to meet. We don't feel an urgency to meet right away with the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board. Okay. And I would love to have an in-person meeting where we're all in the same room around a table whenever we're able to do that. At this point, we really don't know when that might be. It might end up still being a virtual meeting in 1 or 2 months from now. Just listening to the governor's guidelines going forward, they still are wanting to limit groups to no more than 10 on a statewide level right now. And that would be at more than 10 people in one room automatically. So chances are we still would be having a virtual meeting.
Right.
Lisa?
Yeah, you bet. I can talk to them this afternoon. We have a little scheduled time for open discussion too after the grant review, and I'll bring all these topics up to them, and maybe we should just reschedule for May, whether it's Zoom or I doubt in person, but I can talk to Charlotte about your agendas and what things look like then. Does that sound good?
Okay. Yeah. Another topic that I would love to have sort of a short version of State of the River report on what the flows are looking like in the Roaring Fork the Colorado and going in Lake Powell. I think that would be a good education. A snapshot of what's happening. And in a month's time, I think the figures then with people starting irrigating will be more meaningful than they would be now.
Yeah. Great. Okay, I think I have everything captured here.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, you guys, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
All right, we'll get in touch. Thanks.
So that makes next Tuesday's meeting shorter on the tail end of it. So anything else on your end, John? Patty, you're very quiet on future agendas lately. Do you have?
No, I already gave John my 2 inputs, and looking at the meeting on Tuesday, it really just gives us prep for OTC, future agendas, and open discussion. So maybe Mr. Peacock can find some more interesting topics for us to discuss on Tuesday, or the meeting is going to be extremely short.
And
Great.
Oh, sorry, John was just about to start.
sorry, and you know what we should be adding on there is Kelly asked for a briefing last time during open future agendas on steps that the county took following the recession, the 2009 recession, and so we can make some time, obviously, for that.
Perfect.
That should be on there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other board members, Greg?
Just, you know, I was going to save it for open discussion, but future agendas make sense. When we're ready, April long, we'll be ready to report on what's happening with RWAPA. There will be, she did not send out the invoices for the various members back in January, and I said, please get it to us soon. We might want to discuss what's happening with our contributions to the ANS program. I can just anticipate pressure for RUDI is going to come on, as Steve mentioned, with irrigation season, with boating season. We're all kind of waiting to see what the Forest Service and the state do regarding their employees being available and opening up campsites and bathrooms up there, along with Forest Service opening the boat ramp, which is currently closed. But she's got some requests coming our way with Forest Service, or maybe without, for perhaps some help, certainly some budget items. She could get on a Zoom call with us. We could put her on the agenda for 20 or 30 minutes and get an earful on what's happening with RUDI. And I think it's timely before the season starts, or before the public thinks the season is starting. There's some press releases that need to go out. Might be a good time to check in with April.
I'd support that. We have the time to do it too.
Yeah, we have the time. That's it for me for here, for future agendas.
Okay. Any other board comments on future agendas?
Well, actually, sorry.
Let's go on to board.
Steve just had one. Sorry. I was thinking that as you know, we've been dispersing a lot of funds. We have the public fund programs. We do get fairly regular reports from John on what's happening, what's happening with the money. I'm wondering when we're going to want to get a more detailed report on how the economic assistance grants are being spent or where being put out. If there's more information on that, you know, and can we actually measure if it's doing anything in the local economy? It'd be nice to have a report from a financial person on that after the appropriate period. It may be too soon, but I'm just thinking we want to stay on top of this disbursement of funds.
And Greg, I can give you an update today on the disbursement of the funds. The broader analysis you're asking for, you're right. I think that will take some more time to figure out.
Right. Yeah. It'd be great if we could survey the recipients in some confidential, anonymous way, just to know how the money is being spent, where it's being used, how, is it, can we optimize this some way to make sure it's working properly?
I would offer on that topic, we have a board of social services. Thanks. On Greg's request, we have a board of social services meeting where Nan, typically goes into a lot of detail about the economic assistance program. I don't know if she will be able to offer information about your question as far as what the economic contribution of that has been, but I would expect a lot of those details would be prepared for us at the BOSS meeting.
What's the date on that one?
Let me look. May 19th. That's a month out. So I don't know if that's late.
That may be the appropriate amount of time. John, you could let us know what you think about that.
Yeah, we'll be giving you updated numbers, and I'm happy to say they are changing significantly on a daily basis. So I'll give you some today. And by the time the Board of Social Services rolls around, they will have changed, and the Human Services staff will be able to go into more detail about where those funds are.
Great.
Okay. Okay, going to board reports. Let's go, well, APSHA's first on there, so George, do you want to do an APSHA report? And then you could report on all of your things at one time. We won't go by what the list says, but do it by person.
Okay. So last week at first reading, we went through some general guideline amendments that were just proposing some clarifications and really don't represent any material changes. However, there were 3 different policy changes that we passed at first reading that we'll be looking at next week at our second final reading. And the first is the allowance of a bid packet on file at any given time. This would prohibit an individual from bidding as a single person and also bidding in a larger household. So the change is needed both for automation as well as for fairness. And the home Trex system will only allow 1 packet per individual. So that's one policy change. The second one is rental requalification exceeding income or assets. This change would give individuals 1 year to come back into compliance or vacate the unit. The current process allows for a household to have an additional year. However, if they are only allowed an additional year, if they are actively bidding or looking for other rental properties. So this is hard for APSHA to track. An individual might be bidding but have no interest in purchasing, or they could say they are looking for other properties when they are not at all. So we're just trying to clean that up. And the last one is changing the provision of when asset verification for assets that have been assigned, conveyed, transferred, or otherwise disposed of within the previous 10 years. Currently, it's 2 years. And we're thinking that we need to have a little more time for that process to happen. 10 years may be too long. We may find something that works in between. So that's what we're currently working on. We do have, this is going to be interesting, we do have a full day virtual retreat this coming Friday. And I'll let Kelly talk a little bit more about that.
Steve, could I ask George a question?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, George,
Go ahead.
on the rental, so is that saying that people who are renting a unit and then their income goes up because they got a raise at work or got a better job, that they have to either be looking for another place to rent or to buy actively within a year, or they lose the rental that they're currently in?
Well, let's see. Just 1 year to come back. If rental requalification exceeds income or assets, this allows individuals 1 year to come back into compliance. Let's see.
So that pretty much says to me that if you get a better job or you get a raise, you might be out of housing. Not sure I agree with that.
I don't think that's the goal or purpose. This doesn't really clarify that too much the way it was written, but I'll find out about that. I don't believe that's okay, thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, that is the case, Patty. So a rental that's assigned a Category 2 is intended for a person who's a Category 2. So if when they resubmit their qualification paperwork, they show a Category 3 or 4 income, that they would have a year to have to qualify for Category 2 or find a new place. This doesn't change that. What it changes is the requirement that APSHA currently has that says the person in the rental has a year to qualify and has to be looking for a new place. That second part about having to look for the new place is what they can't track. The year grace period to either come back into compliance or find a new place, it doesn't change from that.
Okay.
And there is another policy question. It has come up about, should those categories change as the person's incomes change so people aren't losing their spaces, or is the policy to retain, we know we need Category 2 housing for a great group of people, and so there's movement in the system. That policy question is not being wrestled with in this change.
Okay, that's the point that concerns me, to say, well, you can either come back into compliance, that means you get a job that's paying you less. I think we want people to better their lives and to get better jobs and to have more income. I understand the need for certain levels of housing, for certain categories, but at the same time, I hate to disincentivize or something people from making their lives better, because it's difficult to find housing. So after a year, they may be out of the community and having to move to Rifle because they can't find housing up here. And is that what we really want to do? We want people to better their lives. So maybe that's a further discussion as to, and I've brought this up before, maybe allowing people to take their healthcare premiums with proof of how much they pay off of their income, because we also want people to have healthcare. At the same time, we want people to be bettering their lives by increasing their income. So maybe there's a way we can work that out where we aren't kind of discouraging people from getting better jobs or getting paid more money. At the same time, I think we're raising the rents, so it makes it even more difficult. We want you to make the same amount of money, but we want you to pay more in rent. I just think that maybe deserves some further discussion.
It does. I will offer that they've changed the income and asset caps, so it fluctuates based on AMI. So some years you can earn more money and be in the same category unit. But these are broader policy questions that are not in what you're talking about.
Right. So I think that should be part of a discussion at some point, to how do we allow people to better their lives and not discourage them from doing so at the same time, because they might not have a place to live. So bigger discussion. Thank you.
And then, Kelly, you want to give the board an update on the upcoming retreat?
Yeah, so as required in the IGA that we adopted and City of Aspen adopted last summer, it requires that the newly formulated APSHA board create a strategic plan. And that strategic plan has to include mission, a mission statement, vision, values, goals, And then that is to inform a work plan that then informs the budget. So you have a 5-year strategic plan that will inform an annual work plan that will inform the budget. And the timing of this is being determined by the budgetary calendar. So City of Aspen's budget calendar basically starts in June. And so the requirement in the IGA is that the budget for next year will align with a work plan for next year that has to align with the strategic plan. So we are in a strategic planning process where we're having a second retreat next Friday that's being facilitated by Stephanie Zaza, and she has talked with all of the APSHA board members and some of the staff to create the agenda for what that will be. And the main topics of that will really focus on the mission statement and the vision, because at the first retreat, we did a lot of conversation already about values and projects that could inform, you know, the goals and objectives, and then a work plan. So that is what we will be doing on Friday. Is that enough, George?
Thanks, Kelly. Okay, any other questions on APSHA? We'll get back to you after the retreat, I'm sure. Let's see.
Oh yeah, actually, George, sorry. I don't know if this is the point where we check in, but I think I'll just flag a point for open discussion on this, because the strategic plan will come back to our board and to City Council for ratification. And so I think it's prudent for George and I to check in with you guys about sort of the range of conversation that could possibly happen on Friday. So we can go into it informed with your input, because the range really could be, you know, as narrow as we're a housing authority, we function for years, you know, this is the track we're going to go along, to, you know, we should be answering all housing problems in the valley from here to Parachute. So Stephanie, I think, will manage a very good conversation, and she's teed it up well in our documents. But I do think we should just check in about that, because I don't want it to come back to us in 3 months or, you know, in June and have you guys be like, what is this strategic plan? What have you guys done? You know, so knowing that it has to come back for ratification, we should touch base before, you know, today, before Friday. So.
And again, it's a strategic plan, so we're not going to be getting into details at all. So we don't want to get into the weeds at all.
Greg? Yeah, not wanting to get into the weeds, but one of the thoughts that occurs to me when I think about APSHA and people that are in APSHA, and how, as Patty mentioned, we have people whose economic circumstances are changing. Some people are living in APSHA housing and doing quite well. And I'm wondering how much, if there was a way to keep the money they have that they can afford to invest elsewhere, because some of them do, if they could keep that somewhere in our Tri-County area, if there's some way APSHA could come up with a strategic plan for an investment, whether through a bank or a credit union or some, you know, this is way out there. I don't know if this is even remotely cooked as an idea, but wouldn't it be great if the money that is being made in the community, that people who are doing well, living in affordable housing, cannot invest locally, could be invested locally in some way, through some way that might actually help the affordable housing program, maybe a credit union with a loan program or something. When you think about the guaranteed appreciation on affordable housing, often it's a much better investment and safer investment than the free market. Maybe there's some way we could take advantage of that and give them an investment here locally where the money's working locally. Something worth talking about. I'm sure you've got bankers on that board who have a better picture of that than I would, but I'd love to hear what they have to say about it.
Okay,
George,
that's
you want to?
yeah. I'll go on to RAFTA. The ridership is holding fairly consistent right now, about 1,100 passengers per day. That equates to, along the Highway 82 corridor, a little over 800 passengers a day. And around Aspen, around 300 passengers a day. And we're seeing, staff is seeing high compliance with all the mandatory requirements with the face coverings, as well as monitoring the number of passengers per bus. So currently, it's still, each bus is only allowing 9 passengers per bus, although there are shuttle buses that are following to pick up other people who may be waiting at the stops. And that seems to be working pretty effectively right now. So that's all good. I think the challenge for RAFTA will be, as the community starts to open up more and more, how will RAFTA try to accommodate those additional riders and still maintain the social distancing? So that's going to be a challenge. We'll sort of see what happens. As part of the CARE Act, there was a certain percentage of money that is going towards transit agencies throughout the country, and Colorado got their share, and CDOT is in charge of distributing that. And for the first release of those dollars, RAFTA received a little over $5 million, and that can be used everything from operations to maintenance to offsetting salaries and layoffs and things like that. So that's great for RAFTA, and we may be seeing another wave of money coming in as well, because of course RAFTA is the second largest transit agency in the state. So RAFTA is doing well in that regard. So that's RAFTA.
Wait, George,
unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah, George, Steve, can I ask George a question?
Go ahead, Patty.
Yeah, I just received an email from someone in the construction industry. They're trying to think about how they're going to move their construction workers without putting them in single vehicles. And the thought was thrown out about RAFTA maybe assigning a bus and driver per construction site, and then the construction site, the construction company would fund those buses through RAFTA. It's an opportunity and option because most of those job sites aren't on a bus route. So how do you get the people that you have on the buses to go to the construction site, not being able to get to the construction site? So I think this is a really good idea to think about. So I'm going to pass it off to you, and I'll send you this email if you'd like, George, and maybe you can discuss with Dan Blankenship. I think it's a great opportunity. I had talked earlier with this person about maybe the construction companies just offering to give RAFTA a donation to help with the transportation issues, but this might make much better sense. So I'll send it off to you, George, and see what you think. Thank you. Perfect timing.
Great, thanks. All right, perfect. Okay, let's see, CORE. We're talking about policy changes with CORE. We got a first blush at a 2021 draft budget, and that's going to be a little bit challenging because a good chunk of CORE's funding comes from rep dollars, and as we know, the county's fund is withering away. The city has quite a bit more money right now, but the challenge will be to see if the city will fill the gap needed for a CORE budget, which is still going to be substantially reduced from this year. But CORE is also looking at ways that the organization can help with the recovery, and certainly with the opening of construction sites and ability for those projects to go ahead. CORE has the opportunity to again promote free home assessments, gives the residential and commercial homeowners and property owners the opportunity to see where they may be able to find energy savings through the assessment, and then of course the rebate program will be going on, and perhaps some more renewable energy projects. It might be a good time to utilize that. Of course, talking with some of the local banks and see whether we can backfill the bank's low interest loans and make them zero interest to, again, get the economy going in that part of the sector. So that's pretty exciting, and we'll sort of see how that works over the next month or two. Let's see, the Intermountain Transportation Planning Region met, and basically they just went over the draft of the 2045 transit and rural area transportation plan that CDOT's been working on for this last year and a half, and so that's ready to go. And I think that was it. That was a short meeting with the TPR. I think that's it.
Okay. That's it for George. Let's go to the Board of Health next, and then Greg, why don't you take the lead on that? Patty, you can weigh in on the Board of Health, and then Greg, you can finish your other things too. Mute. Mike.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was saying I was looking at my RWAPA notes, so I can pivot to Board of Health. We've had an emergency meeting. I know there has been a request to have another one on Monday. We're still waiting to hear, only so the Board of Health can be teed up and prepared for the end of some of these public health orders that are going to be ending before our next Board of Health meeting. So that's the discussion at the front of it, but we haven't had I don't have anything else to add right now. I'm sorry. That's all I've got for you. I'm gonna. Sorry, go ahead, Patty.
I want to just jump in. I don't know how many of the members of the BOCC have been either calling in or whatever and following the Board of Health meetings, because they're always open to the public. But yeah, there's been some great discussions going on there. You know, that's how we started to really start thinking about reopening construction and landscaping and lawn care. And in turn, then we have to reopen the landfill, which is, you know, comes back to the Board of County Commissioners. And I haven't had a chance to touch base with John Peacock to see how the landfill issue is going, and will we be ready when construction projects gear up again and landscaping projects, because they're going to need to take construction waste and landscape waste to the landfill. So maybe John Peacock can fill me in on that right now as part of this discussion.
Yeah, and I was during open discussion, just in case the board members had not watched the Board of Health, I was going to walk through, Patty,
okay,
changes that are were directed in our public health order, and I can talk about those things then if that's okay.
Yeah, just as long as we touch base on it today, I'm good. Thanks. Thanks, Greg.
Great. Thanks, Patty. Thanks, John, for pinch hitting there. Getting back to RWAPA, I just wanted to bring up what's happening now is that the Forest Service has closed the boat ramp until June 1st, unless that rule gets rescinded and pushed back. All the facilities up there are closed. The state facilities, there are no state employees working in the area because the state doesn't want them in contact. So the bathrooms are closed. All the other facilities are closed as well. So no power boats are allowed on Route I presently. People could take a stand-up paddleboard or a kayak up there and put in and paddle around, although it's not recommended because there really are no facilities for them. So it's not a great recreation destination. There was the story about the broken gate at Wolford Reservoir when some anxious or impatient power boater happened to be a fishing guide, a commercial guide, broke in. And so April's very nervous about something like that possibly happening here. So we're talking about getting out in front of it with some media, press releases, an understanding and comment from law enforcement about the urgency and the severity of consequences if somebody decides to try and do that. I know she wanted to talk to us the Forest Service has talked about putting a Jersey barrier up just to block the ramp so people don't even try to get to the gate. And so I may be getting ahead of it a little bit here. She has a press release, a draft that you can share here in a day or two. And so there'll be some media outreach just on the importance of following the rules at Root Eye. We still have kept the aquatic nuisance species out of Root Eye, while other reservoirs in the state have had incidents. And even though we've interdicted more boats, as many or more boats at Root Eye than anywhere else in the state, really, for the aquatic nuisance, but we managed to catch them. We want to continue doing that. I think that's probably it from April. She'll have more for us later. Yes, regarding the invoicing for our share of the aquatic nuisance, we'll be seeing that soon. I've asked her to send that to John, and we can discuss that at a future meeting. I think that's it for RWAPA.
Question, Greg. At the Root Eye facilities, the different campgrounds there, are those operated by the Forest Service, or are they operated by the Bureau of Reclamation? And who decides the operation?
When April described it to me today, she said that it seems to be some state facilities in there as well, like the bathroom facilities at the rest spots and things like that. So with the Forest Service facilities being shut down and the state facilities being shut down, I think we can assume that everything is. And I don't know if BUREC has a campground or any other facility up there. I'm sorry, I don't know that one. We can find out when we talk to her.
Yeah. And thinking ahead, at some point, any sort of a public restroom or porta potties that are out in remote areas in campgrounds or up on Independence Pass or anywhere, there would be no staff person. I mean, some of them might have a regular campground host who could do disinfecting of the door handles and whatnot, do more cleaning of the facilities, but many of them are remote, and there really is not somebody going by regularly to maintain them. So I think that's going to be problematic on opening up any sort of those kind of facilities in the near future.
I think you're right. Not just at Root Eye. I did talk to her also about adding something to the sign. There's a sign on the Frying Pan River Road that indicates whether Root Eye is open or closed. She might have some additional material put on that sign just to deter boat people from heading all the way up there. We don't want them to drive all the way up and discover it's closed. Better to short stop them lower. We talked about doing some outreach with media and then maybe even posters, things that could be notices put up around in the various places the boaters stop on their way up there. The big concern I had is, what if Lake Powell, for instance, opens and people are using that and then heading back up this way? We need to be prepared for an onslaught. You have to assume that when restrictions are lifted, we're going to have a surge of people who want to get back in the water. So I want to make sure she's prepared for that. So I think that's all I've got from Root Eye now. Thanks.
Okay. Patty, moving along the list, Northwest Cog is next. Why don't you do yours?
All right, Northwest Cog has been doing these great, really frequent updates as to what other jurisdictions are doing and what they're facing with COVID. One of the biggest concerns, of course, I think we can all understand with COG is the loss of revenue from programs like energy and weatherization and elevators. So I'm looking at some adjustments there and how we're going to rally around that. The bigger thing, too, is the Economic Development District did cancel their great symposium they put on in May. I don't know if we're going to be able to reschedule that. It's hard to get those guest speakers to come back, but I think Rachel Looney is working on it. That was a great event, and I was really looking forward to it. It's really well attended, and last year had amazing speakers that came. So COG is trudging along. They're keeping a close eye on funding for senior services issues, how that may be impacted. once we can get those facilities back open again and start going back to our regular programming for senior services. So that's also part of what COG is looking for. The SBDC, the small business loans, COG has been reaching out, really following that, again, at a state and federal level. It's a great resource, contact person for small businesses. There's a consulting, I'm trying to get a hold of, a person in Denver that you can call for questions and concerns to see how he might be able to provide some information perhaps to the city of Aspen with what their efforts right now to help their small businesses. So that's kind of been moving on there. ACRA is just my other appointment. As you know, ACRA is just trying to figure out what the next steps are going to be with, the closure now of we're not going to have the June Jazz Aspen, and all those events are just starting to go by the wayside, and look at how they can, try and gear up again here later on in the summers for some public events, small scale maybe, or trying to be creative. ACRA's really good at coming up with some creative solutions, as they have been trying to do with fireworks, and so we'll just see what happens there. They are obviously paying attention to everything that's happening around the world, around the country, and in the state and regionally, working with other chambers of commerce to see what problem solving they have done and what we can share. So that's about where ACRA is. It's difficult for those meetings because there's so many people to be in one room with the Zoom meetings or whatever, and but they're still trying to pull off their monthly meetings. And I think that other than the other issues with the Board of Health, which Greg and I have already touched on, and I'm really glad, again, Greg, I have to add that I'm really glad that we've really brought the Board of Health as a whole into these decisions, and with either regular meetings more frequently or emergency meetings as needed. I think there's the great discussions there, and I think it's really beneficial to our public health staff to have a weigh-in from the Board of Health, and I think that has really proven to be a good move. So I think that's about where I stand, and then I just have some other comments at open discussion, but I'll wait till we get to that. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Kelly, do you want to do, maybe you could talk about QQ and CCAT, and then I could talk about Club 20 and CCI?
Yeah. So with regards to the water groups, QQ and the Basin Roundtable have both canceled their last quarterly meeting, so there's not a lot of update there. And then given that QQ is focused on legislation, they haven't updated about what they expect will happen when the legislature comes back into session. And so a lot of reports will actually be very short because the legislature has not reconvened, and when they do, they will be focused on passing the budget and the School Financing Act. So with that, I'll actually just go straight into CC4CA. So that's the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, and they continue to be very active on rulemaking. With regards to legislative stuff, again, because the legislature has been adjourned and hasn't reconvened yet, there's not a lot of action happening there, nor does CC4CA necessarily expect that there will. What is disappointing about this is that 21 of the 22 bills that CC4CA was working on had not passed its way finally through the legislature. So one bill made it to the governor's desk having to do with energy choice, and that has to do with different energy providers more on the Front Range and not affecting us here. So 21 of the bills are still either have only moved through one chamber or haven't completed their move through one chamber. So we're not really sure where those are going to get picked up, since, again, it's unlikely that the legislature is going to do a lot of legislative debate unrelated to the budget and COVID. They are working on rulemaking. I've reported out previously about our efforts with regards to the inventory and reporting rules. Those will be coming before, we'll be going from the APCD to the AQCC in May, and so we are finalizing our recommendations about, how the state should be writing these rules to collect and report greenhouse gas emission data. And we relied a lot on our local providers local jurisdictions who have done greenhouse gas inventories for that. And then, let's see, CCAT. So again, counties and commissioners acting together is a legislative body that lobbies at the state on our behalf. And so the work that's been going on there has most recently had to do with the CARES Act funding. So this is the third bill that was passed at the federal level to bring, to pass money along to help get everyone through the COVID response. And so there's a debate going on right now, which I know you've all been clued into via email, but about whether or not local jurisdictions are going to receive any of that money from the CARES Act. And so the language of the legislation specifically said that jurisdictions over 500,000 can apply directly for that money. The remainder of the money allocated for states will come to the state for distribution. Now, Senators Gardner and Bennett wrote a very clear letter to Treasury, because Treasury is the agency that will set up essentially the guidelines for how this money should be distributed outside of the jurisdictions of 500,000 that can apply directly. And they were very clear in their letter that the intent of that federal legislation was to make its way to local jurisdictions and to cover direct costs related to COVID, as well as lost revenue related to COVID. So our senators have made that clear from their perspective. The debate that's happening now is whether the state will pass through the portion of money that it receives to local governments like ours. So we have been active in asking the governor to please do that. We signed on a letter with our Roaring Fork partners, City of Aspen, Town of Smith Village, Basalt, Eagle County, last week, asking the governor, please make a commitment to giving us this money to pay us back for our COVID-related expenses and address revenue loss. The governor said over the weekend that it's not his decision to make. It is the Joint Budget Committee's decision to make at the legislature, because they ultimately are the ones in Colorado. They are the ones who create the budget, and the legislature is the body that adopts the budget, and it incorporates, the governor's priorities. However, it is not the governor's budget as is in some other states. So our letter was copied to the Joint Budget Committee, as well as our Senate and state representatives. And then I've been following up on the phone, and CCAT has been lobbying and meeting directly with Joint Budget Committee members to get the commitment to have that money come to local governments, rather than be kept at the state to only pay for state COVID response efforts, or only fill the state's budget gap, which they're looking at $3 billion for the next year, and then $7 billion over the next 3 years. So that is the debate that's happening now, and CCAT and CCI and yours truly are lobbying heavily to try and get money to our communities.
Good job.
Those are my reports.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Is there do you have any update on when the legislature is possibly going to reconvene in Denver?
Give me a minute to look up the date, because I don't remember exactly when they were planning to reconvene, but I know it's been announced, and I'll let you know. Yeah,
it seemed like it was pretty soon, like towards the end of April or in early May, they were wanting to reconvene. Maybe they will go ahead and do that, given that the governor's loosening up some of the stay-at-home orders. And
Yeah, let me
But I think
figure
the
that out.
prognosis for the different bills that were going through the works, probably very few of them, if any, will progress anymore this session, because they'll probably be concentrating more on the pandemic kind of issues. So CCI has been holding...
I can answer your question. Sorry. So May 12th on the Joint Budget Committee. Oh, sorry. Can I go ahead and answer your question, Steve? Sorry. So May 12th, the Joint Budget Committee would get together, and then May 18th or 19th, the full legislature would reconvene.
Okay.
And
I think the long bill
of work.
The Joint Budget Committee long bill will probably be the focus of the remainder of the legislative session, I would imagine, because that's something they have to pass that. Okay, the CCI staff has been working really hard, acting kind of as a liaison between our U.S. senators and the state government and the counties. We've gotten a lot of information. John Swartout has, since he used to work for the state government, I think that puts him in a good position to be kind of a good liaison with the state government. Just giving us the most up-to-date information and really taking the concerns of the counties to the state government, because there have been deficiencies in the response of the state to the counties. I think it's actually getting better. It's much better now than it was initially with the state government working with the counties better. The Mountain District meeting of CCI has held two different meetings, Zoom meetings where people can, interactive meetings where different commissioners from different counties can actually weigh in. I don't think they've tried to do that on a full CCI scale. The things they're holding are more informational, where their panel of experts will be presenting and the commissioners can watch that but not participate so much. So it's actually been kind of neat having the Mountain District commissioners who have more in common with where we are than other parts of the state, and being able to have more communication with them, I think, has been valuable. Club 20 canceled the spring meeting, which was going to be held just, is this about CCI, Kelly?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to report out about the highway user transportation fee, the HUTF program, because CCI sent out updated projections on that, and they haven't finalized them yet. What they're projecting is a loss of $18,000 for Pickens County from what we would ordinarily receive, and that's in about the $1,020,000 range. So that's all. Okay. I'll let you guys know.
Okay. Going back to Club 20. So Club 20 canceled the spring meeting, which was going to have been held in Grand Junction last week. They have planned a half-day virtual board meeting on May 29th at this point, which will be kind of the business meeting of Club 20 without any of the social events that they hold and the educational events that they normally hold at Club 20. So their schedule, like everyone else's, is totally out of whack at this point. Same way with CCI has canceled the spring, I guess, I don't know if it's spring or summer meeting, or first part of June. They've been polling commissioners to see if they would want to hold that meeting sometime in July, or just do a virtual kind of a meeting in June, or how to proceed at this point. I think I maybe would favor just doing a virtual meeting in June where they could have some presentations by speakers and have some discussion, maybe have breakout Zoom meetings on different topics where the commissioners can discuss things. Might be a way they could go. Senior council has not had even tried to have meetings since this is shut down, since the senior center is closed for everything except they're delivering meals to seniors, or seniors can go and pick up meals at the meal time. But the senior center itself is closed. The staff can assist people with problems who need assistance, but the senior council itself has not attempted to meet, and I don't think there hasn't been talk about trying to hold a virtual meeting at this point. That might be everything. Let's see, looking at the list, Nordic Council, George, you didn't talk about that, but I imagine there's probably not much going on in the Nordic world right now. And does anyone else have any other updates or afterthoughts about what you said earlier in your comments? Okay, don't see any. Let's see. Board open discussion. John, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm going to try and share a screen here. This may take me host disabled participant screen sharing. Well, that's going to make open discussion a lot shorter.
John, you should be okay. Go ahead.
Okay, let me try again here. Are you all seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, gosh, there is so much to potentially talk about. I am going to try and focus in today, one, on answering some of the questions that came up earlier, talk a little bit about the upcoming changes that were announced yesterday by the governor, talk about where our public health order changes are, and then talk a little bit about how we're viewing our future here. A lot of this is based on information that is presented at the Board of Health, so I'll apologize in advance. I know Patty and Greg, you've already seen a lot of this, and I suspect a few other board members already watched some of this. But just real quick, where we are today, we have 44 confirmed positive tests. We have held, it's tragic that we've had 2 deaths, but the good news is we've been holding at that number for quite a while. We have one, and this was as of yesterday evening, we had one current patient, either known or under investigation for COVID-19 in Aspen Valley Hospital, and we've had 12 admitted or transferred. You all were asking for this information just a little bit ago. So just some, this is as of today for our emergency cash assistance in April. We have issued just over $1.1 million That represents 988 requests that have been paid out, assisting over 1,600 individuals. You can see some other stats there about the households and how many of those households we've been able to refer to TANF. Not a lot, which I think, I mean, it is a lot at 123. It's a tremendous amount, but relative to the total number of requests that we've reviewed and paid out on, I hope the board can see the importance of this cash aid. And then right now, the average benefit per household is just over $1,100.
I think George had a question.
Yeah, John, I'm looking at how those dollars have been distributed for what purposes: shelter, food, gas, cash. That's about 10% of the total that has already been distributed.
Where we can, George, we're making direct payments to landlords and such on shelter. Sometimes that's not, that hasn't been possible. There are also other cash needs in households, whether it be related to medicines, transportation, what have you, just gaps that are being covered. So sometimes we, if it's not classified exactly in one of these other areas, but they've demonstrated a need or a gap to stay sustainable. This would also represent funding that would be going out, emergency aid that would be going out to our undocumented population.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yep. And I'm sorry, I can only see these slides. I can't see you. So Steve, I'm just going to rely on you to jump in. This is a really busy slide, and we're still trying to find good information from yesterday's conversation from the governor about the stay-at-home orders for the state going to safer at-home orders. These, I will just note, are probably going to be subject to more detail going forward and clarification. But just to give the board and public a quick idea, this is where the state's going. The county's public health order is still in effect until the 30th, and the Board of Health and our public health director will be considering extending that, and I'll talk a little bit about that process in a few slides. But pretty much how we're understanding the safer at home order that the state is going to be moving to is that folks should continue to stay at home as much as possible. Vulnerable populations should continue to follow stay-at-home guidelines. Additional precautions, including testing and mask wearing, required at nursing homes and assisted care facilities. Face masks are encouraged anytime you leave the home. Gatherings over 10 people are prohibited. So the state is moving on the gathering size. It had previously just been immediate family. Picking counties, of course, is currently at 5 people, and I'll talk about where our order is changing or not in a minute here. Critical businesses remain open with strict precautions. Retail businesses can open for curbside delivery starting April 27th. And those that want to open to the general public on May 1st with additional social distancing precautions. I have not seen those from the state, but I have not talked to our public health team today to see if any of those have come out through CDPHE. Our understanding is childcare remains open with precautions. Education facilities remain closed. Personal services under the state order, salons, tattoo, dog grooming, dental offices, reopen with precautions. Again, we're waiting to see what those are. Real estate for private showings, elective surgeries with precautions, bars, restaurants, clubs to remain closed for time being, although there's indication that there'd be a phased reopening during this period, but that they want to wait and see what happens with infection and surge data before they make those changes. So I think those guidelines would also be forthcoming. And then non-critical offices open at 50% capacity starting May 4th. I don't know, frankly, a whole lot more about, we're still waiting for additional information. I just popped out the CDPHE's website to see if there are any new updates about the safer at home upcoming public health order, and none was available there yet. So we're waiting to get some more information. That's what we know from the discussion yesterday.
George?
Yeah,
And Greg?
I think what's going to be interesting, and especially for Greg and Patty and the Board of Health, is as the governor was touting the Eagle County being the first county to start to reopen for business, that could be a real test to see as they reopen if and when they may get a surge, and that may provide some good information for us to see if and when we want to follow that or in what phases. So I thought that's as our neighbor county, and where we've got a lot of people that perhaps are going in between counties, it will be a good test to see how Eagle County is going to be handling that and what the impacts and surges will look like.
Yeah, and George, I have been in discussion with some of my peers from other mountain communities, and you know, I know there's going to be a lot of conversations happening this week amongst within jurisdictions and amongst jurisdictions. I think a lot of the other mountain community counties, Gunnison, Summit, and such, are going to be in a similar profile to what I'm going to discuss as far as where we are right now, and maybe taking a little bit more cautious approach with reopening, a little bit longer timeline.
Okay, and Greg had a question too.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for that, and thank you for your caution there. I came away a little bit concerned about, it seemed like some mixed messaging just listening to what I heard of the governor's press conference, and his announcement that Eagle would be the first to open did give me pause, since they've had such an influx and such a high rate of infection and you know, COVID-19 cases there. So, and because they're connected to us, there is cause for concern. I've had comments from people asking, well, did the governor just say that we could open up a yoga studio? Can we reopen the gym? I see personal trainers are listed there, but I don't see group activities and gyms open there. And I just thought that's something we want to highlight, because we do have a lot of yoga studios and gyms in the valley. A lot of people are eager to get back, but we have to be very unequivocal about what we're going to mean when we either open or don't reopen them.
And Greg, I want to be very clear for both the board and for those that are watching, is our local public health order, where it is more restrictive than the state, remains the public health order that we'd be operating.
Right. Thank you for reiterating that.
Yeah, and we are also really still waiting for more specific understanding about what some of these things mean. So I just want to, that was a summary of bullet points of changes that we're expecting based on what we heard yesterday. But clearly there needs to be more detail put out by the state, and hopefully we'll have that this week so that our policymakers and our staff can evaluate the state's public health order and how it fits with our situation.
Great. I'm behind you 100% on this. I think it was a little surprising what I heard yesterday. So I think it's great that that's the approach our public health department is taking. Thanks.
Excellent. And again, I can't see people. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Some of the different guidelines for when businesses or construction companies reopen is that they monitor the temperatures of people when they come to work. And they have these little electronic things they can get the temperature off of people's faces. Are those readily available? I have no idea how expensive they are. Can people get them? There's probably going to be a huge run on them. They're probably all made overseas, and the supply in the United States will probably be gone immediately if it's not already. Do you know anything about that?
You know, Steve, I know we've been getting a lot of links to thermometers and such, and most of them have been sold out, it's true. But frankly, when it comes to, and I'm going to pivot now to our Pickens County public health order changes that were discussed by the Board of Health that Patty and Greg were referencing earlier, because there are going to be similar requirements, Steve, for symptom tracking and sanitary facilities and logging of a lot of information. And so all of those pieces to do those things, whether it's taking temperature, the sanitation facilities, or hand sanitizers, are going to need to be available for these activities to resume. And so I think supplies are coming more online, but it's an issue. There's a lot of competition for these things out there right now. Mm-hmm. So as far as the county's public health order, as I already kind of implied, based on the conversation from the last Board of Health meeting and the changes to the states, and I just want to, I know I've told the board this before, I'm going to skip to another slide before I go to these, because Pickens County has had one of the strictest public health orders in the state and nation, and particularly when it came to construction activities, landscape and maintenance, lodging. We really had a strict public health order. And as we've measured the metrics based on cell phone data, measuring travel, density of gatherings, algorithms that look at essential versus non-essential travel, Pickens County, along with some of our other Colorado mountain counties, have not only consistently ranked tops in the state in terms of the effectiveness of those social distancing metrics, but of all 3,300 plus counties in the nation. And so we have had very strict and I think effective public health orders, and we're now looking at our incremental path to roll some of those back as our infection rates have remained low. And so in the discussion with the Board of Health, some of the changes that will be coming our way on March 23rd construction. Our previous public health order had only allowed projects or critical public projects or critical infrastructure projects to move forward. Staff had proposed, and the Board of Health supported, allowing construction projects with an approved COVID-19 safety plan showing adherence to social distancing requirements. We will begin taking those plans. Actually, they're up on our site right now, so folks can start taking those. And as safety site plans are approved, construction activities can resume on April 27th. Right now, if you go to the county's webpage, there's a button, a COVID construction tab that lists both the requirements that projects have to meet. Those have been, those were developed with public health and in cooperation with industry reps. And so all the plan requirements and restrictions for those job sites are listed there, as well as the opportunity to submit plans. And if you go out to the website, you'll also see we're going to be logging quite a bit of information around symptoms and sanitation on the sites and that sort of thing. Right now, other counties have construction guidelines. Right now, I am the only one that we're aware of that's requiring submission and review of these site safety plans. Those will be coming through the Community Development Department. Here in Pickens County, they're being trained by public health staff. Similarly, they will be going to the Community Development Departments of Aspen, Snowmass, and Basalt. Their staff will also be trained by public health on reviewing and approving those plans. Landscaping, maintenance activities will be allowed. Social distancing guidelines that landscape companies have to adhere to will be released, I believe, also today. And then any projects requiring a permit would also have a COVID-19 site safety plan. So, any questions on that before I move on?
You're muted, Steve, but hopefully John can hear me.
I can
John,
hear you, George.
When you were mentioning that you were going to be coordinating with the other community development departments, Aspen, Snowmass, and Basalt. Basalt in particular, because Basalt, of course, is a multi-jurisdictional municipality, and I'm a little concerned that they may have different rules for those projects within the Basalt municipality for Eagle County versus those in Pickens County. It'd be great if their Basalt would just adhere to Pickens County, because some of those workers may be going back and forth between Eagle County job sites and Pickens County job sites.
I think the planning I think there's a lot of similarities, George, between the guidelines that Eagle County is using and ours. We are stricter in the sense that we're requiring the plan to be submitted ahead of time, and that we're reviewing and approving those plans. I don't think that's the position. I'll have to talk to Ryan. I haven't had that conversation about how Basalt is approaching right now, what are our different approaches between Eagle and Pickens County. I know that's a challenge for them. So I'll have to ask that question.
Yeah, that'd be great. And again, it would just be for those jobs that are within the township of Basalt, although some, again, straddle between Eagle and Pickens County. And I think some of the Basalt trustees were always supportive in terms of trying to get Basalt to follow our strict protocols versus Eagle's protocols.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're applying this across Basalt or just the Pickens County portion. Frankly, I was assuming just the Pickens County portion, but I'll ask that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Golf courses, the state had given specific guidance on opening golf courses. Actually, our previous public health order was not specific to these. We're proposing, again, being a little stricter, but following largely the state's guidelines around golf course reopenings. But golf courses that do want to reopen in Pickens County will need to share their social distancing plan and have that approved by public health before resuming activities. And again, we think that's an activity similar to what we've seen with others, like hiking and skinning and such, where there is a good opportunity for social distancing, and it's a healthy activity. We just need to make sure that rules are being followed and social distancing is being observed. So again, on the 23rd, just a slight realignment in retail, and it's really aligning Pickens County's public health order with what the state currently identifies as critical businesses. The specific impacts that we'd see there is allowing bike repair and office supply type businesses to open with social distancing requirements.
Greg? Just I had a question regarding the Apple store, the computer store. They could be, I guess they could be considered office supplies. They're an essential service if your iPhone or your computer's broken to some people, certainly. How would something like that fit in there? Is there enough leeway that we could put them in this category, or is this going to require a future public health order for a retail like that?
I would probably want to consult our public health staff. I hadn't thought about that one, Greg, and I think maybe I'm not the qualified one to make that interpretation.
Right, I was thinking,
so
future agenda, item.
Steve, can I tag on to that? Yeah, well, John, if anything, too, it would be, right now we have communication opportunities that are available, that are open. And if anything, the Apple Store with your phone and your computer and everything would, to me, be more of in the communication category. Maybe office supplies, but I think a lot of that is communication, which is already allowed. It's already considered a critical or essential business.
Yeah, good point, Patty. While we're on the topic of openings, I only had one other request that's come to me recently, and that was regarding a pet groomer who wants to reopen to do dog grooming, but wasn't sure where they fit. And if it's a one-off thing where the dog's dropped off, you could imagine it being done in some hygienic way, but that's probably needs to go on our list.
Perhaps, and I'm going to discourage the board from choosing one-off kind of businesses, because we're going to need to focus on the big picture. And if I could parking lot that, because I think there's a bigger picture for the infrastructure that we need to build to release from public health orders and get more to that individual mitigation that you guys are talking about. So do you mind if I parking lot those specific ones for a few slides? And
I would certainly encourage you to do that. And I think that there may be ways to categorize different businesses depending on, interaction, and I'm sure that's something public health is thinking about. Thank you.
So right now, in terms of what's been directed, and again, this is more information for what changes were directed for the 23rd. Right now, places of public accommodation, so like the gyms or restaurants, liquor stores, that sort of thing, and lodging, including hotels, motels, and short-term rentals. Right now, those restrictions are not set to change for the 23rd, nor is the quarantine requirement that's in the public health order for second homeowners, families.
Wait, can I bring that up, Steve? Can I talk?
Yeah, go ahead, Patty.
Well, John, in reading the newspaper today, it looks like people are not quarantining themselves as required. From what you were hearing and reading from restaurants who realize that we're having an influx of people who are coming here to ride the tide of the virus, and we're really not. I don't know what we're doing as far as enforcement of the short-term rentals, especially. People are sliding in under the radar into those. The gentleman from Texas, a visitor from Texas, saying it's great, I can go out snowmobiling and do this and that and run around town. Well, what are we doing? I mean, we've got these signs up that you have to self-quarantine, and, it's a difficult one to enforce, but I think people need to know that we're taking this serious and that there's repercussions for those actions, and we need to find a way to get behind it, or, why are we doing it?
Yeah, Patty, I think, you've hit the nail on the head. These are difficult ones to go down and identify. Law enforcement has been committed to trying to find the most egregious violations where they can, but we do have limited enforcement capability, but we are certainly getting the word out about these requirements. And again, I go back to, yes, we're going to be able to find instances where this is not met, but when you look at the overall metrics for gathering densities and travel and such, by and large, our public health orders are being adhered to.
Well, I think we need to make a clear statement, and I'll do so now to the public, that we are taking this serious, and there are serious consequences for actions, including up to $5,000 fine and up to 18 months in jail, and that if people are found to be really flying in the face of these requirements, that we are asking people to please pay attention to and follow for the health of this entire community and the well-being, that people who are found to be egregious will have actions taken against them. And that's a statement I just made for the public.
Thanks, Patty. So
Kelly,
this is...
Kelly has a
sorry.
hand up.
Yeah. I had mentioned this to John yesterday, I think, but I think it's going to be even more important with the further confusion that any disparity from the state order and our order will cause. And I think, as we all step down away from this in different ways, and ways that are best for our community, that differ from what the state may think is best, we should be doing frequent mailings, using our assessor's list to people who don't live here full time, to know what the requirements are, what the expectation is, so they can plan accordingly.
Yeah, and Patty, that's also an opportunity to highlight the messaging that you just gave. So this is, there's going to be a lot more conversation coming up, but the county is going to have a significant role here in terms of how do we ease up? Because I think what we're all struggling with right now, and you can hear it when we're concerned about, well, what about these, types of businesses that may be able to meet social distancing or not? What we're struggling with is this tension between how do we maintain safety and public health as we start to ease on our public health orders. And so the strategy that was talked about at the public health meeting last week is this box it in strategy. That right now the public health orders are our blunt instrument to keep the virus from spreading. But as we reintroduce activity, what we need to be able to do is widely test, isolate infected people so that they're not spreading the virus, find, and that's contact tracing, find those people who have been in contact with those who are infected and make sure that they're in self-isolation or quarantine to see if they develop symptoms that would bring us back to step one. This is what communities or countries, frankly, because frankly has not been ours, are doing to reintroduce activity. Put another way, there's a roadmap for stair-stepping or easing the public health orders in an orderly fashion. Our focus this week is instead of thinking about just incremental changes to our public health order, what we really need to be focused on and spending our energy on is how to build this box-in strategy so that, I think, Greg, to your earlier point, we can choose those sectors that we can reopen and then measure and evaluate and see if we can maintain sustained decreases in cases, that we're maintaining the ability of our healthcare system to deal with the number of infections in the community. And so what that's going to require is a few things, and this is going to affect us at the county. Obviously, building our testing capacity. We're having those conversations with our partners this week. We hope to have an answer for how we are going to do this, have the testing available for all those with the who are symptomatic and symptomatic for COVID-19 in a way that the test is meaningful within that quick turnaround period. The isolate and find strategies, and this is about partnership with our healthcare community. The isolate and find strategies, these are strategies that we own in our public health department. And so this is going to require people. It's going to require people to do contact tracing and to oversee isolation and quarantine, to be checking in with people. I think to your point, Patty, how are we doing it? We need some people to help us out. Right now, to cover a population of 17 to 18,000 people, we're going to need 15 to 18 contact tracers. And so our goal is by the end of this week to have a plan put together for the next 12 to 18 months in terms of how testing will occur for everyone who's symptomatic within these time frames, and how we will build the infrastructure to do the isolate, contact tracing, and quarantine strategies. Because once you have all of these pieces in place and you have assurance that you can box the infections in, then you can start to really incrementally open up. And that's really what the state's talking about doing. They're really starting to talk about that incremental reopening, but I don't think all of those strategies in terms of how testing is going to take place on a statewide basis, how the contact tracing infrastructure is going to be built on a statewide basis, it is in place for us to really get to this boxing in strategy. So counties are left to do it on their own. Eagle County is going to be one of the first to experiment with this. We will be watching them. I think, George, to your point, we want to be a little bit more cautious in easing on the public health orders. But our focus right now, and what's going to be coming back to this board for resourcing, is how do we build this infrastructure until the time that we have either a vaccine or therapeutic treatment that's effective and makes this virus less of a health threat. We would then...
Kelly has her hand up.
I just have a comment. I just want to, thank you, John, and thank our public health team. I think they're being really thoughtful, and they're providing some very clear thought processes of how the community should be thinking about the future phases. I'm really nervous about what the governor's deciding to do personally. He gave Picken a couple of different shout outs in his press conference yesterday, and one of them being that, we're managing to acquire testing. And I don't think anybody on this board or anybody in our community is satisfied with where we're at with regards to our testing. And so looking to us as a beacon in the state for what testing capacity is looking like, to me, is not an accolade I want or feel comfortable with. And so I'm glad that, we have a really thoughtful and I think measurable way to move forward and protect our community. So thanks.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Steve? Yeah, John, you and I have talked about a lot of this, but the question I have is funding. You're talking about bringing 15 to 18 people on to do tracking in this community. First of all, what kind of qualifications? How do we hire them? How do we fund it? We're looking at major funding deficits within the county budget for many reasons. But this one I think is enormous, and that's something we need to talk about sooner than later. Is if we're looking to do this in the future, we need to figure out how we're going to fund it.
Yeah, Patty. I mean, this is our challenge, and some of this we're going to be looking at initial steps of being able to utilize existing employees with the proper skill sets that we can train through public health to provide initial capacity. We're going to be looking for community partnerships to do this. But as we reopen, and this is a completely legitimate concern, and it's something that we're thinking about at the staff level and in terms of figuring out this planning, Patty. As more activity is allowed, we're not going to be able to repurpose our own employees. We're going to need to add resources to make this happen. And so right now, I've estimated that this could be anywhere from $1 million to $1.2 million cost by the time you do the testing, as well as the term limited kind of contact tracing. This is why the funding partnerships from the state and the federal government are so important. You're right, our revenues are going down, just like everyone else's. And I think the big difference is, in a lot of places, our demand for resources and expenditures is going up during this time, and this is a good example. We have to figure this out, because this is the safe way for us to begin to reopen and allow activity and allow people to resume their lives. And we're going to be looking for community partnerships, and we hope state and federal partnerships, because frankly, they're relying on local governments to do this with very little support. So I'll get off my soapbox there. This is an example that was used during the Board of Health meeting, that as you meet those metrics and you start to, you feel confident in that testing and contact tracing and isolation quarantine infrastructure that's been built to box in that virus. You know, there are stages, and we talked about it as staging. Sometimes it's talked about as a spigot, where you kind of turn it on and back it off a little bit. We're still searching for the right metaphor. CALFO, I think I sent out their version of these same things, which is ski slope ratings. At any rate, this is not necessarily, this is an example of how you might step back in. And you can see basically the state is moving more towards a stage 1 reopening. We would be more comfortable recommending that once we have that infrastructure built that I was just talking about. But that's when you start to look at the events. You may look at restaurants with density changes, like what the state's doing, and that partial reopening of retail. We think that that is too soon for us, so we are going to be recommending that Pickens County go at its own pace and not the state's pace. But we may not be that far behind. And then you can see how, you know, you start to look at group sizes and K through 12 and how you might go move towards more of a full reopening. So that's going to be a lot more conversation. If this wasn't really meant for us to make those policy decisions today, because we're going to be putting some proposals together for consideration by Board of Health and policymakers. I just wanted you to know that we're trying to refocus. We have limited resources in our public health department and in the county. We've got a small but mighty bench. And we are now trying to refocus on these big issues so that we can get to a space where we can safely reopen and we can provide not only our residents, but our visitors and our future visitors true confidence that we've got the public health infrastructure to deal with this, and this is a safe and a great place to visit again. I just wanted to note, I think you know, this is just how effective our social distancing is. You can see it in relation to our public health orders, which went into effect right about here. This is when we, you know, got our big cohort of cases, and this is one of those. Unicast is one of those companies that tracks the cell phone data, and you can just see the dramatic impact on, you know, in this case, non-essential visits and such our public health orders have had. And what we would expect is, as we incrementally build this contact testing, contact tracing infrastructure, and we incrementally loosen our public health orders, that these stats will change. But I just want you to know, in terms of our strategy of really shutting down for a time period to not let the virus get a toehold, we did it as well, if not, we did it really well. Should be really proud of the public health team and everyone that's been involved in.
Steve, can I make a quick comment? Because I know we have to move to executive session here, but, you know, John, I agree. We have done an amazing job here. Our public health team has gone above and beyond, and the hours and the time and the commitment they put in is, I don't think we can thank them enough. Of course, but my concern is we do such a good job here, but we bring in tourists from all around the world, our visitors and our guests. What kind of communities are they coming from? And that's going to be the challenge for us, is we can bend over backwards here, which we do here. This community is known for doing things above and beyond. But it's the people who are going to be coming here, the visitors and the guests that we want to come back here, that could be of greater concern to the health of our community.
You are exactly right. And because of public... Oh, sorry, Steve. Yeah.
Tagging on to that thought, I just read a report today that one epidemiologist or virologist, I'm not sure what his field is, thinks that there are as many as 30 different mutations of the COVID-19 virus right now. Some of them much more virulent than others. Some are more mild. And if we have people coming from different parts of the world, maybe we have the mild version here right now. Maybe someone else brings in a virulent one from somewhere else that could hit us, smack us upside the head.
That is why building this box-it-in infrastructure and doing it really well before we open up is so, so important. And I know there's going to be a cost, and we're going to have to figure that out. But the cost of building this infrastructure to do things well is going to be much less than the economic and social disruptions of continuing with these really, really strict public health orders. And so this is the balance point we're going to have to find. And Steve, that is why we cannot do this box-in strategy halfway. And we can't do it halfway and open up our tourist-based economy. So this is the focus right now. Okay,
Greg has his hand up.
Very briefly, I think Patty's point and John's, yours as well, regarding the neighboring counties. If Eagle opens up and they are much more open than we are, and for instance, not saying they would, we're going to have the same sort of problem we have with workers coming in as we would with tourists coming in from elsewhere. I also wanted to say that I know it's frustrating with the state. We're going to be depending on the state and the feds for funding to help us pay for the contact tracing and all of that, but I don't think we can afford to wait for them as they dither on making a decision or making a declaration or a pronouncement one way or the other. And I really do applaud you for pressing ahead with it. And I also realize they are our partner and they should be a better partner. We need to rely on them for funding, but I want to make sure that we're not waiting for them to make a decision before we can make one, if possible.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks. I just want to confirm what I think I heard at the Board of Health meeting last Thursday too, because, you know, we are taking the first incremental step to open back up. And what I took away from that, and please confirm if that was correct, is that, you know, we've bought the time to start to do this strategy in a limited fashion. So we can open up to workers coming into our community, open up construction, landscaping, because we do have tests that if people need to get tested due to exposure we expect will happen as we slowly open up, and to trace that limited capacity is in place to match our limited opening.
You are correct, Kelly, and that includes epidemiological resources for contact tracing. we're trying to look ahead now. How do we scale this up so that we can safely and effectively allow more of our normal activities to resume? And it is going to take time still, but we really need to start. And we don't want to make these changes precipitously and put people's health at risk. And so, yes, we feel like we have the capacity. That's why staff recommended it. And we will be measuring it and hopefully coming to you with a proposal that allows us to take the next step and the next step and to return to some normalcy, because I know we all want that.
Okay. All right, John, thanks for that presentation.
That's all I've got for open discussion.
That's educational. I mean, all of us are well versed in this pandemic and the different issues involved, but we need to, every day we need to keep having updates on what's the latest in the ever-changing environment out there. So are we done with our regular part of our work session?
Well,
Ready to go into executive session?
Steve, I had some more open discussion, but apparently Mr. Peacock took all of our open.
No.
But I will hold on to them tomorrow. If you promise me tomorrow, we can bring them up because there are issues that we need to address. So if we can do it tomorrow as part of the regular meeting, that would be great.
Let's do it tomorrow, and remind me. I actually will make a note on here that Patty has open discussion on my agenda.
I have it written down on my agenda for tomorrow. So I will make a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of, I don't have the new executive session agenda in front of me.
So it's IECC legislation, FAA airlines negotiation, centennial litigation, personnel litigation, all pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B.
That is my motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor to go into executive session? Say aye.
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 Aye. Steve, I have 4 items for open discussion tomorrow.
We have a long meeting,
so. How many do you have, Patty? Okay.
I'm first.
We'll try to get them all in tomorrow. All right, let's take a 5-minute break and then go